For more of this kind of content, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment.
Welcome to this
Marcus
hidden
Reed
sanctuary.
chopped wood with
Let me show you
mechanical
what lies
precision,
within.
the axe biting deep into the fallen oak. 6 months alone in the Kepler forest had taught him that routine kept madness at bay. The morning mist clung to the towering trees around his small cabin, their alien purple bark gleaming with moisture. He paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but different. The forest held its breath too long between boat calls. Marcus had been an environmental scientist before everything went wrong on Earth. Before the corporate scandals destroyed his research team. Before Dr. Sarah Chen stopped returning his calls. Before he decided humanity's expansion into space was just another way to repeat old mistakes. Walking back to the cabin, Marcus stopped dead. His axe leaned against the porch rail, blade gleaming sharp as a razor. He distinctly remembered leaving it embedded in the chopping block last night, too tired to wrestle it free. "Okay," he said aloud to the empty clearing. "That's new." The forest offered no answers. Marcus picked up the axe, testing the edge with his thumb. Not only moved, but sharpened to perfection. Someone had been here while he slept. The thought should have terrified him, but instead he felt curious. After months of isolation, even mysterious help was company. Inside the cabin, Marcus made coffee and considered the possibilities. The Kepler colony was 300 kilometers away, too far for casual visitors. The wildlife here was harmless, mostly small mammals and birds adapted to the planet's unique atmosphere. That left few explanations, all of them unsettling. He spent the morning reinforcing his cabin's walls, partly for winter preparation, partly to keep his hands busy. The work felt watched. Not threatened, but watched, but observed with scientific interest. Like being a specimen in a gentle experiment. At noon, Marcus found boot prints near his water collection system. Small prints with an unusual tread pattern, almost organic looking. Definitely not human manufacture. He knelt, studying the impressions in the soft earth. They led from the tree line to his water barrel and back again. "If you're checking my water quality," Marcus called out conversationally, "I appreciate the concern. It tests clean, but second opinions are always welcome." A branch cracked in the forest. Marcus didn't look up, continuing to examine the prints. Sudden movements felt like the wrong approach. Whatever was watching him had been careful to help, not harm. That suggested intelligence, and perhaps even kindness. That evening, Marcus cooked twice as much dinner as usual. He couldn't explain the impulse, but it felt right. He ate half, then carried the rest outside, placing it on a flat stone at the clearing's edge. "Dinner's ready if you want it," he announced to the darkening forest. "Fair warning, I'm not much of a cook, but it's hot and free." He retreated inside, leaving the door slightly open, and waited. 2 hours passed before movement caught Marcus's eye. A figure emerged from the trees with obvious caution, testing each step before committing weight to it. In the strange twilight of Kepler 442b, where 3 small moons cast overlapping shadows, Marcus saw her clearly for the first time. She was tall, nearly his height, with pale skin that seemed to catch and reflect the moonlight. Her hair fell in waves past her shoulders, so light it appeared almost silver. But it was her ears that made Marcus's breath catch, long and elegantly pointed. They swept back from her skull like living architecture, twitching and rotating independently as she assessed her surroundings. She approached the food stone with visible wariness, crouching beside it to study the offering from every angle. Then she looked directly at the cabin, at the window, at him. Even across the distance, Marcus could see intelligence in her gaze, could see her making calculations and decisions. She picked up the bowl, raised it slightly toward the cabin in what might have been acknowledgement or thanks, and melted back into the forest. Marcus released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You're welcome," he called softly, too late for her to hear. "Same time tomorrow. I'll work on my cooking." The next morning brought more evidence of his mysterious visitor. His firewood had been restacked with geometric precision. Tools he'd left scattered were organized by size and function. Small repairs he'd been procrastinating appeared completed with materials he didn't recognize. Marcus began leaving things deliberately. A bar of soap on the porch rail, a spare knife beside his chopping block, a waterproof container of matches. Each morning they were gone, replaced by offerings he couldn't identify. Bundles of herbs that smelled like cinnamon and rain. Smooth stones arranged in patterns that seemed almost like writing. Once, a piece of fabric that felt alive under his fingers, shifting texture as he touched it. The breakthrough came on the fifth night. Marcus sat on his porch, reading by lamplight, and deliberately projecting his voice as he read passages from an old poetry collection. Movement in his peripheral vision, but he kept his eyes on the page. Chapter 7, he announced to the violet-tinged darkness, in which ancient Earth poets contemplate humanity's place in the universe and get very emotional about it. I apologize in advance for the metaphors. A sound from the forest, not quite a laugh, but close. Marcus's heart rate quickened, but he forced himself to continue reading, to maintain the illusion of casual routine. She was getting bolder, each night a little closer, each visit slightly longer. Trust was building, slowly and carefully. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Marcus read aloud, then paused. "Though I suppose you don't have summer here, shall I compare thee to a mildly warm afternoon, with decent humidity levels, doesn't have the same poetry to it?" This time the laugh was unmistakable. Marcus smiled at his book, feeling something warm unfurl in his chest. After 6 months of talking to coffee pots and trees, actual response to his words felt like magic. Even alien laughter was company, was connection, was proof that he wasn't as alone as he'd thought. He finished the poem and closed the book. "Same time tomorrow," he said to the forest. "I've got a whole collection of questionable human literature that could use a proper audience." The forest rustled with what might have been agreement or amusement, and Marcus went inside feeling lighter than he had in months. The morning brought fog thick enough to slice, turning the world into a dream of gray and silver. Marcus moved carefully through the reduced visibility, checking his small animal traps by memory and touch. The forest felt different in the fog, more intimate, like being wrapped in a soft blanket that muffled sound and blurred edges. He was checking the third trap when he felt it, that familiar sensation of being watched, but different now, much closer. Marcus didn't turn around, forcing himself to continue untangling the empty snare, while his pulse hammered in his ears. "Fog's something else today," he said conversationally to the gray air. "Back on Earth, we used to say you could get lost in weather like this." Of course, on Earth, the forests were full of mysterious helpers who rearrange firewood and sharpen axes. Silence. Then from directly behind him, close enough that he could hear fabric rustling, a voice. "You speak to yourself frequently." Marcus's hands froze on the snare. Her voice was melodic, each word carefully pronounced, as if she'd learned standard English from recordings, and was still perfecting the inflections. He forced himself to continue working, to not spin around and ruin everything with sudden movement. "It's a survival mechanism," he replied, keeping his tone light. "Humans aren't designed for this much solitude. We need to hear voices, even our own. Otherwise, the brain starts inventing company, and that leads to madness and imaginary friends." He paused, then added carefully, "Though I suppose you're real, which makes this less concerning from a mental health perspective." "You knew I was watching." Not a question, a statement. Marcus finished with the snare and stood slowly, still facing away from her. "Hard to miss. My axe has never been sharper. And I definitely didn't stack that firewood with mathematical precision." He took a breath. "I'm going to turn around now, just so you know." Very slowly, performed by a man whose knees make alarming sounds. "Your joints are damaged?" "They're old. I'm only 38, but my knees think they're 70. Marcus turned with glacial slowness and found himself facing his watcher at a distance of perhaps 3 meters. The fog softened her edges, but couldn't hide the details that marked her as clearly non-human. Her skin held a faint luminescence that might have been reflection or might have been natural. She wore clothes that seemed to shift color to match the foggy background. But it was her ears that held his attention. Those elegant points angled slightly back in what he was learning to read as focused alertness. "Hello," Marcus said simply. "I'm Marcus Reed. I've been living here for 6 months. And I promise I'm much less interesting than all that surveillance suggests." Her head tilted in a gesture that was more bird than human. "You are interesting. That is why I remain here." Remain here as opposed to gone, reported, assignment completed. She took a half step forward, then stopped herself, clearly fighting instincts that told her to retreat. "I was instructed to observe for 30 days. Marcus did the math. That was nearly 5 months ago. "So you're behind schedule?" Her lips twitched in what might become a smile with practice. "Very behind schedule. My people will be concerned." "Your people," Marcus repeated. "There are more of you. A settlement?" "Hidden. We've been here for generations, since before humans arrived on this world." She said it matter-of-factly, but her posture suggested tension. "I am a scout. I watch for threats." Marcus glanced down at himself. Stained work clothes, questionable beard, hands that smelled like coffee and wood smoke. "And I'm threatening?" "You are human. Humans expand. Humans consume. Humans claim." She recited it like doctrine, but her expression suggested doubt. "I was sent to assess your threat level and report so my people could decide what to do about you." "What to do about me sounds ominous." "It is ominous." She met his eyes directly, and Marcus saw something unexpected there. Conflict, uncertainty. "But I have watched you for months. You repair what you break. You thank trees before taking wood. You read poetry to empty air and cry sometimes when you think no one can hear." Marcus felt heat rise to his face. Those were private moments. "Nothing is private when someone watches." She said it apologetically. "I am sorry, it was necessary. But now I know you, and I cannot report you as a threat." The fog shifted around them, creating and dissolving walls of white. Marcus processed her words, trying to understand the implications. "You can't report me because..." Because they will send warriors to eliminate the threat. She looked away toward the obscured forest. I have delayed too long. Now I cannot be the reason you are removed. Marcus's mouth went dry. Removed. That's a euphemism. Yes. They stood in the fog-wrapped silence, two beings from different worlds who had found something unexpected in each other. Marcus tried to organize his thoughts, but they kept circling back to the impossible situation. He'd come to Kepler to escape human complications, and now he faced alien politics that might cost him his life. I don't suppose, Marcus said carefully, we could just continue this arrangement? You watch from a distance, I pretend not to notice? Everyone stays unremoved. They already suspect something is wrong. My silence speaks loudly. She turned back to him, those remarkable ears angled forward in absolute focus. But I returned each day because I could not stop watching. 6 months of your life, and I know your routines, your habits, your small joys and large sorrows. I know you sing badly when you cook. I know you talk to your tools like friends. I know you are lonely in ways that match my own loneliness. Marcus laughed, a sharp sound that made her flinch. Sorry, it's just, I spent 6 months thinking I was alone, and apparently I had a dedicated observer documenting my complete failure at hermit life. You are not failing, you are surviving, which is different. She took another step closer, and Marcus caught a scent like rain and growing things. I am called Zira. Zira. Marcus tried the name. Liked how it felt. That's beautiful. I'm curious about the ears, if that's not rude. I'm a biologist by training, and they're remarkable. Enhanced hearing? Temperature regulation? Zira looked genuinely surprised. You want to know about my ears? I spent my career studying adaptation and environmental response. Your ears are fascinating from an evolutionary standpoint. Do they move independently? What's their range of motion? They do all those things. Also, they indicate emotion, which makes lying difficult for my people. Her ears had shifted forward, and Marcus realized this might indicate pleasure or interest. Useful for society. Terrible for surprise parties. What are surprise parties? Marcus grinned. Let me make some coffee, and I'll explain the beautiful human tradition of traumatizing friends with unexpected celebrations. Zira glanced toward the forest, clearly torn between curiosity and duty. Then back to Marcus, something shifting in her expression. Decision crystallizing. Yes, coffee, but I must leave before full daylight. Before your people notice you're still here? Before I stop wanting to leave, she said quietly. They walked toward his cabin, through fog that held them separate from all watching worlds. Inside, Marcus made coffee, while Zira examined everything with scientific curiosity. She touched his books, studied his primitive tools, ran fingers along the rough walls he'd built himself. You constructed this alone? Took me 3 months. The walls aren't perfectly straight, but they keep the rain out. Marcus handed her a steaming cup. Fair warning, my coffee is terrible. Zira sipped cautiously, her expression suggesting diplomatic effort. It is not good coffee. See? Honest. I like that. Marcus sat across from her at his small table. Tell me about your people. We are called Valdari. We came here 12 generations ago, when our home world became uninhabitable. We sought isolation, peace, a place to live without being cataloged and studied. She cradled the cup in long-fingered hands. When humans arrived 40 years ago, we retreated deeper, made ourselves invisible. You're refugees. Yes. And humans are very good at finding things, at claiming them, at making them part of larger systems. Her ears angled back. My people believe humans will eventually discover us, and when they do, our peace ends. Not all humans are expansionist. Are you not? You came here alone, but you brought communication equipment. Your technology sits in that sealed container. She gestured toward his emergency beacon. You could call for help any time. Scene. Marcus nodded slowly. She wasn't wrong. Even in isolation, he carried the tools of connection, the possibility of return to human space. Imagine that open possum, a lesson scene between the safety of hiding and the possibility that not all humans are what we fear them to be. The fog began to lift outside, revealing glimpses of the forest Marcus had come to love. Somewhere in those trees, Zira's people waited for news that would determine his fate. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd sought escape from human judgment, only to face alien justice. Whatever you choose, Marcus said quietly. I want you to know that these past weeks, knowing I wasn't alone, have meant everything to me. Even being watched was better than the emptiness. Zira reached across the table, her fingers brushing his. Her skin was warm, surprisingly human, despite everything that marked her as other. I choose truth, she said. Both our peoples deserve that much. 3 days later, Marcus woke to find Zira standing beside his cabin with 3 other Valdari. His heart hammered as he recognized the military bearing of her companions. But Zira raised her hand in a calming gesture. Commander Thane, she said as Marcus approached. This is Marcus Reed. The commander was older than Zira, with intricate patterns of small scars along her arms that spoke of rank or ritual. Her ears remained rigidly upright as she studied Marcus with obvious skepticism. Scout Zira has made unusual claims about your character, Thane said, in careful English. She suggests you represent something different from what we know of humans. Marcus spread his hands, trying to look non-threatening. I represent one human who just wants to live quietly in the woods. I can't speak for my entire species. One human becomes many. One settlement becomes cities. This is the pattern. Sometimes, Marcus agreed, but sometimes one human becomes a hermit who talks to coffee pots and reads poetry to trees. There are as many patterns as there are people. Thane's expression remained unmoved. Zira has compromised her mission watching you. She faces punishment for this failure. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. Punishment for being thorough? For learning the truth instead of confirming assumptions. The truth? Thane's ears angled forward aggressively. What truth would that be? Marcus looked at Zira, who nodded encouragingly. The truth that fear makes poor decisions. You've hidden for 40 years, and what has it gained you? You know nothing about modern humans, our diversity, our capacity for growth. You've built your safety on ignorance. Ignorance keeps us alive. Ignorance keeps you isolated. There's a difference. Marcus gestured toward his cabin, the forest, the life he'd built. I came here to escape human society, because it had become something I didn't recognize. But running away didn't solve anything. It just made me alone. He looked at Zira again, drawing strength from her presence. Zira taught me that being known, even by someone completely different from myself, was better than perfect solitude. Maybe your people could learn something similar. Commander Thane was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried new consideration. You would advocate for contact, for ending our concealment? I would advocate for choice, The choice to remain hidden or to cautiously explore connection. The choice to let fear decide your future or to let curiosity guide it. Marcus smiled slightly. Besides, if you're going to judge humans, wouldn't it be better to judge us accurately rather than through 40-year-old assumptions? Thane looked at her companions, then back to Marcus. Zira will return with us to face judgment. You will remain here, under observation. If you prove trustworthy over time, perhaps limited contact can be established. Relief flooded through Marcus. I can live with that. But, Thane continued, if you betray this trust, if you call for others, or attempt to expose us, the consequences will be severe. Marcus nodded, understanding. One question, though. Who's going to be observing me? Zira stepped forward, a small smile playing at her lips. That assignment has been deemed too dangerous for rotation. Apparently, prolonged observation of humans causes significant judgment impairment. So you're stuck with me? I am stuck with you, she confirmed, her ears expressing what Marcus had learned to recognize as contentment. Someone must ensure you do not burn down the forest with your cooking. As the other Valdari melted back into the trees, Marcus and Zira stood together in the clearing that had become their shared space. The morning light filtered through alien trees, casting everything in soft greens and golds. What did we just accomplish? Marcus asked. We built a bridge, Zira replied. A very small bridge between two peoples who forgot how to trust. Whether anyone chooses to cross it remains to be seen. Marcus nodded, understanding. Change was slow, trust was fragile, and the future remained uncertain. But for the first time in months, uncertainty felt like possibility rather than threat. In that case, he said, I should probably learn to make better coffee. Can't have intergalactic relations foundering on my terrible brewing technique. Zira laughed, the sound bright and clear in the morning air. I will teach you Valdari brewing methods. Perhaps we can find something between human efficiency and Valdari flavor. As they walked toward the cabin together, Marcus reflected on the strange path that had brought them here. He'd sought isolation and found connection. He'd feared judgment and discovered understanding. Sometimes the most important bridges were built not between worlds, but between two beings, willing to see past difference to the common ground beneath. The forest hummed its approval around them, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future felt full of possibility. This story teaches us that true understanding comes not from distance and assumptions, but from patient observation, open communication, and the courage to bridge differences. Both Marcus and Zira learned that isolation, while sometimes necessary for healing, is not a permanent solution to life's problems. The greatest growth happens when we're willing to be vulnerable, to be truly seen by another, and to extend the same generous observation to others. Fear may keep us safe in the short term, but only curiosity and compassion can build the connections that make life meaningful. Sometimes, the most profound relationships form between the most unlikely people, proving that understanding transcends all boundaries when approached with genuine openness and respect.